Today we've got a very exciting guest on the show. Her name is Jodi and she is a speech and language therapist. She gives us some tips, strategies and gets us to understand really how speech and communication work with our children. Welcome to the show, Jodi.
Thank you for having me.
It will be really great for you to let us know kind of your journey when you started becoming a speech therapist and how it makes you feel.
First of all, I love my job. That's how it makes me feel. I have a huge passion for what I do. I qualified in 2009, which seems ages ago, straight out of school. And I'm really grateful. I don't even know how. I just fell into it. I always wanted to do something with kids. I wanted to help. And I literally fell into it. I did a 3-year course at Birmingham.
As a speech therapist?
So it's a speech therapy course.
Wow.
There are lots of ways of doing it. You can do straight from school, or you can do like a master's after another degree.
So did you always want to be with special needs children?
I didn't know I did. I didn't know when I was doing the course that I would end up kind of specialising in special needs. I didn't even know I'd specialise in children, because you can do children or adults. You normally go one way or the other. But actually, when I was training, all of my experience was only in children, which is actually quite rare. You're supposed to do it 50-50, but luckily for my career now, all of my experience was with children. And then you do kind of clinical experiences in the university, and most of it was with special needs. And that's when I started developing like a real passion for special needs children. And it kind of just went from there. It literally just led into my job. And then my second job, I was only kind of working with special needs children, and then it led into kind of leading a service for children with special needs.
So during your it is a master's?
No, I didn't. I did the undergrad. Okay. You can do a master's as well.
Fine. So during your degree, did you have to work with children during that time?
Yeah, I think about 40% is work experience, and 60% is clinical. Not clinical, sorry, is
written.
Written.
It kind of makes sense, really. Because obviously you need to understand the job, but I guess the best way to understand is working with children 100%. And seeing how they develop or not develop.
Yeah.
Okay. So Jade, if we don't mind you saying, Jodi's works with Bailey Bow.
She does indeed.
I'm her speech therapist.
She is. And she's the only one that I would ever use.
You do have a really amazing reputation, I must say.
Thank you.
Really
I get so embarrassed, but thank you.
No, seriously, you should say hats off and thank you. And just before, I do remember the only time we've ever met was through COVID, through a phone. When I started my social media page with my sister-in-law, we started talking and we did a live.
Yeah.
And we did say it off filming, but for me, I didn't actually know that Callie was autistic or had any sort of speech delay because it was before her regression. But I think it was coming up to her regression, because I remember doing the live at my parents' house, and that was the time where we could just go to one other family home. So it was almost coming out of COVID, but she didn't have the regression she did have the regression in COVID, but it was, the time where we could we can go into other people's houses, and we did a live together. And I obviously couldn't really resonate because, my child is like perfect and didn't have any sort of regression or autism or speech delay. But I was also in my head knowing something wasn't right. So I found it quite difficult.
I can imagine.
It was triggering, probably.
It was triggering without knowing it was triggering, because I didn't really know what was going on and had absolutely no idea what autism was or speech delay.
And I think a lot of that live was typical development. And I was explaining what is typical development and when to look out for it not being so. And obviously I don't know your daughter. But
especially when it came to the typical development, there wasn't obviously typical development there even before the regression. So I found it triggering. And then that's what was difficult. This first time I had to go and see a doctor and they said, go and get some speech therapy. I was like, nope, I can't do this. I felt it almost, and I know how much speech therapy helps. I know that, but it almost was kind of a bit of a trauma.
Yeah,
in the nicest possible way, not towards you, but just the subject
brought it
of
to its
speech.
Surface, 100%. Often the first, I don't know the percentage, but often the first professional that any family see in any form of communication difficulty is a speech therapist. More often it's that first before a doctor.
Yeah.
I think that's what we did.
Yeah.
I just remember being a blabbering mess when you first came over and did some speech and language with Bailey. I just knew that something just wasn't going to be, that something wasn't right. I knew. I was always that mum that wasn't in denial so much. I always said to you, like, I want the rawest, the hardest truth, however much it hurts me.
You are. And out of all of my clients, you just tell me everything.
I just want to know.
Yeah.
But I have a
But
question.
the thing is, you're not a magician either. So you just don't know, even when you're working with your children, surely.
Yeah, I think that's one of the hardest parts of my job. I don't have a crystal ball. And I think every single client, regardless of the severity of their need, will always say to me, how long? How long does my child need speech therapy for? I'd say at the first appointment with everyone, and I always say, I wish I could tell you. I wish I'd be a billionaire if I could tell you, but you can't. And not only how long, but how long until they can talk? How long? That's every parent's.
Or do you think they will? Do you think like?
And
how do you answer that? Can I ask?
It's really dependent on the client, and not the client, on the parents, because I meet parents, like you just said, Jade, who's like, just tell me, I don't kind of sugarcoat it, just say it as it is. And some parents, like you're saying, in like when we did our live, with love, maybe you weren't ready at that point to have as honest a conversation.
Yeah.
So a lot of my job isn't necessarily like my clinical skills of being the language expert, but it's also like the people skills of knowing if the parent's ready to have those conversations,
managing that expectation,
and emotions.
And to keep that kind of relationship, I have to judge readiness, and that's not. I don't mean that in saying I'm hiding what I'm feeling. I would never say, yeah, your child's fine, when I don't think they are, but explaining the severity or the maybe the intensity or the knock-on effects, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Is dependent on the readiness of the parent.
Yeah.
And I think that's right. And I think another thing that impacts it is where the child is in their development. So not literal as in like if they're nearing school, there'll be more of an urgency to have those discussions if it impacts on function, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's not as simple as how I answer that. It's very kind of
dependent on the client and the parent.
Exactly.
Well, I just remember because before we started speech and language therapy, part of Callie's assessment was that she saw the paediatrician in person, and then she had a phone call with another paediatrician, and then we went to go and see a speech and language therapist, and there was 3 people that would then sum up the diagnosis. And again, I don't know whether it's just me, because I really warm to people, but I think when it's about your own child, it's really difficult to warm to therapists, even though I am one myself, so I fully understand that, but in a different category. I didn't really warm to her. Callie wasn't playing ball at all. There was absolutely nothing going on. And I remember saying to her, and I don't know, I was a bit like how you said to Jodi, like, tell me. I said, do you think Callie will ever talk? And she basically put her arms out, shrugged her shoulders and said, I just don't know. And I found that really difficult to hear. And that's even more trauma for me to then find a speech therapist, because it wasn't the answer that I wanted. And I didn't feel like it was the right answer for her to say.
How many times do you think she's been asked that question?
I know, but I didn't know whether there was a better way of saying it. Like, how do you not know? And I know that people don't know, as you said, you haven't got a crystal ball, but I wanted a different answer. And thankfully, thank the high heavens above, she talks. But we never ever thought that she would, and it made it clear that the speech therapist also didn't know that.
And no speech therapist will know that. And I think parents rightly focus on talking, right? It's
the
walking,
it's the first port of communication,
right? But
it's not the only.
It's not, and I don't work like that. And
Yeah.
I often look at what we call total communication. So total communication is all forms of communication, whether that's pointing, whether that's shaking a head, whether that's sign, whatever,
leading.
Yeah, in any form. My main goal of course, is to be a functional, intentional communicator. But more than that, it's to be an independent communicator that can get their needs met, however that is. And that's kind of how I would always answer a parent.
Yeah.
And like, it's not about talking. And therefore, in a way, I might be kind of dodging the question a bit, but it's also educating the parents on it's more than just words. And for me, that's really important. It's not just about the child, it's also about the parent and the parent's education
and
in
understanding, because why would we know?
Whether it's right or wrong, not that I've come to terms with it, but maybe I'm understanding more that it's not just about speaking. But it's not the speaking that troubles me. It's the lack of understanding. It's the lack of communication in other ways. There is none. I mean, obviously, in your opinion, and only your opinion, does that come? Does the understanding come more when they get older, or because at the moment her world is obviously very small and she can communicate with things that she wants to communicate in? Does that ever change when her interests change? Or
I mean, again, that's like any child. Does it change? Of course it will change. Of course, as she grows up, her interests will change. Look at her a year ago. Look at any child a year ago. It changes. To what level is really hard to say. The other thing I will say is it's not, and this is what I always say to you, I say to other clients, it's the autism is one thing, but your learning level, and that's how I always discuss, it's about your learning ability, not just the autism. So how quickly you can pick up new skills, learn new things, adapt to new places has a significant impact on communication, because it's your ability to learn, not just your ability to talk, right? That makes sense.
Do you, and I know, I don't know whether you can answer this, but it's just sprung to mind. And it's probably, you probably won't be able to answer it, but when you have a new child, do you find it easy? For example, with me, when I'm a therapist, if I work with a child, I find it a lot more difficult than when I work with an adult, because an adult wants therapy and they can communicate and we can have a conversation, whereas children don't know why they're with me and what we're talking about. Do you find it more of a challenge when you have a child that is already verbal but doesn't have a lack of understanding and communication, or whether you start from the beginning with a child that is nonverbal, that you can work with them from the beginning, or can you not
different.
No different.
No,
okay.
no. To me, I've done this, like I said, 15 years. I've never met one child the same, right? And every child that comes, like that I walk into, is different, and it's not easier, harder.
it's just different.
It's just different.
Yeah.
And
that must make it even more challenging for you, though, because
I
know
love it.
Yeah, of course you love it, so passionate, but knowing that you don't know what you're expecting. Whereas, as I said, if I know that someone's got depression, I know what I can work on strategies to help with the depression. Like, you know, when there's different categories.
Yeah, but like language has a framework, right? So of course it's not linear. Like no communication is a straight line. Of course it's not. It's really complex. But I follow a main framework of typical language development, and I have to slot in where I have to slot the child in to whereabouts I can place them in all the different skills, and then wherever their baseline is, we build up across all the skills as much as possible.
Yeah.
But not only that, it's all, for me, all about the parents and educating the parents, because I don't have a magic wand.
Yeah.
I can't come into your house and say, this is what we're doing for an hour and then bye. And then come back in again. It's actually, my biggest thing is, this is what I'm telling you to do as much as you can across the week before I come in next week. And
so it's actually teaching the parents more than the child. I feel like that's with my experience. Like, not that I could absolutely be a speech therapist, but because of the amount that I've learnt. And it's funny because whenever you are in public and you can hear a mum giving an option, would you like, because I feel like speech therapists have a way of speaking, would you like it black or white? And I can hear myself and I'm like, yes.
I hope I don't speak like that in my sessions.
No, I hope no, maybe you don't. And there's nothing wrong with it, but you know when you can just hear, and it's that's and I feel like I do that with my son Marley, who is verbal. I still give him the options because it's what I've learned how to teach speech.
My husband said, well, my oldest his first word was go, and he was like, that could not be more of a speech
Oh
therapist
my
child
God. Right?
than
Even
ever.
you
Because
just
I
said
went,
that.
I was
Ready,
literally,
steady,
yeah, and then I paused and like go.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think going back to what you said about the child or the adult, I work with the adults.
Yeah.
And that, so I work with the child and I work with the adults. And
Do you ideally want both parents if there are two parents? No, just
it's
like
really hard to expect that. Like life, you know,
Yeah.
like life is busy.
Yeah.
And I think becoming a parent really changed my practice because it like opened my eyes to being able to balance, and then on top of that having children with additional needs and the balance of like it's crazy. So no, I expect one parent, and I'm really strict about that.
Yeah.
I've had lots of people call and say, oh, I won't be in the room, and I'm like, no, there's no
You're
point.
in the room.
Yeah, you have to at least watch me, and if you're dipping in and dipping out, that's fine, but
yeah,
at
but you
least
couldn't
be
exactly
present.
say, oh, don't worry, I'll just ask Bailey Bell, or don't worry, I'll just ask Callie. Like you need to be there.
Yeah, it's
I want to be there though.
Yeah, it's your
course.
yeah, it's the benefit is as much, if not more, for the parent than it is for the. Of course, the child gets the benefit, but it's the parent that's carrying over the therapy.
That makes so
Because
much
I
sense.
do think that Bailey's had another regression. I don't know if I'm making that up or it can happen, but the things that we used to do at the beginning, she now won't do. Is that because she's bored of doing what we've done, or is it because she's lost what she learnt?
So, I might say something controversial.
It's okay.
Regression's a big word, right? Like regression is hugely like it's a buzzword, especially for autism. And you hear regression and you think autism, and always with like developmental history, you hear was she developing typically? And even you said before, she still wasn't developing typically, but she lost skills, right? And regression is maybe categorized as losing skills.
Yeah.
There's a difference between losing skills, which is a regression, and not doing them. And I think it's really easy to confuse the two.
Yeah.
And easy to say it's a regression versus she's becoming maybe a little bit more self-led and not
Or lack of interest.
Yeah, lack of interest, or not wanting to do it, or even becoming positively more assertive and more independent and more having more autonomy over herself that she doesn't want to do.
She wants to play with the toy, but she's very much telling me to do it with my hand.
Yeah.
But a year ago, would she tell you to do that?
A year ago, she would have done it herself.
Okay.
Now she won't unless she has my hand there. Now, is that her being lazy?
Don't know.
But this is what's so hard because she doesn't
hard.
speak.
Yeah.
So how do I know?
You don't.
So obviously I still do it as in, no, you're to do it. And I might, on top a few times to show her how to do it. But I feel like she's forgotten to bang a toy.
She hasn't. That's the thing. And I think using that word regression carries such weight because it's a huge thing. Like a regression, to lose skills is a really significant thing.
You don't have to have a regression, though, to be autistic, do you?
No, definitely not.
So in your personal opinion, if the child had words before they lost them, before a regression, do you think they've got more chance of speaking?
This is what you
Later
always
on,
say
yeah.
to me.
So, do you know what?
I know you don't have the answers.
No.
I just want maybe in a personal opinion.
I bet you there is evidence out there. So I actually don't even want to comment on that because I bet you there is many, what do you call them? Like
Proof?
No, like evidence, trials, not trials. What's the word? Like investigations. No, I don't know. There's a word. It's going to come to me. Out there that
Research.
Thank you. Out there that has looked into that and the
because I've read up a
significance
lot on
of
it.
But interestingly, to let us know, and I know, again, as you clearly state, that every child is completely different. You just know, have you seen any pattern in your 15 years experience of having children that had a regression but had speech and then gained their speech? Or
for me, the biggest pattern is the learning.
Okay.
And how quickly, so often it's the response to therapy in the first year or 2 years, 3 years. Once you get past 7, it's more significant of how likely it is for you to talk.
Okay. So it's still a long time away.
Yeah. That's kind of, and again, like all parents, hold on to numbers and hold on to facts, and like if it's 1 year, age or any, not even like just hardcore like new number facts. And if you hear the word 7, then it will be like not you, anyone will obsess over 7, 7, 7, 7. I don't want it to be like that at all, but it is very much. Of course, all brain development is super quick the younger you are, and the older you get, it becomes slower.
Is that why they say early intervention is key? Because
Exactly.
you pick up
It
and
would
learn
look
quicker.
at typical development, right?
Yeah.
Where you're a baby and up to 1 or 2 years, think how much
They've
unbelievable development there is in those first 2 years. I know in my last 2 years, I haven't made that significant, you know?
compared
So
to children,
it slows. It's like a real curve.
So autism is separate thing to global development delay.
Completely separate, but often overlapped.
Yeah.
2 separate diagnoses. Yeah.
But do you have clients that are just globally delayed?
Yeah.
That are just significantly speech delayed?
Yeah. And global delay is another gripe of mine.
I can't bear the
We
word.
hate it.
Do you?
We hate
the word
GDD,
delay.
Yeah,
I
it's
said this
really
to you.
unfortunate. It's you can get children with global developmental delay. First of all, in my opinion, you're right. A delay is you should catch up. Another thing, global developmental delay is all areas of development. Yeah, so speech being one of them, fine motor, gross motor, sensory. But I think you get to a point where the diagnosis global developmental delay can become learning difficulty, and at that point it sits better, because it's okay. So it's not a delay,
right.
It's a learning difficulty. But the issue with it is you can't just diagnose someone with a learning difficulty
At that age.
Yeah. So it's really hard, and a lot of the process of kind of accepting who your child is and where they're going to go is reliant on this diagnosis that may not be accurate when you first get it. Make sense?
Yeah, it does get it.
It does.
Even with Callie, when the paediatrician said, I also need to diagnose her as global developmentally delayed, but she always was fine with her motor skills, fortunately, hit the milestones as when she was meant to stand and when she was meant to walk, but the social and speech, because I think there's 3 factors that make a diagnosis for global developmental delay. But she kind of only had really 2. But she said, I can't not diagnose her as that because they are significantly there. Mm-hmm. But we were saying it to the Send mummies, weren't we? Yeah. We had another podcast with these wonderful girls. And that's where we got confused because, at the moment at school, Callie's in year 1 and her development is developing really well. She was always being from nursery and reception, emerging and everything. And now she's on target. I don't know what the words are, on target or even above.
Amazing.
So this is what I was saying to the girls.
Does that mean she still
did she have global delay? Has she still got speech delay? She can speak beautifully, but if you put her next to another 5.5-year-old, you can see a big difference with their speech.
Yeah. So the issue again is paediatricians will be allowed to give these diagnoses, and speech therapists aren't, because speech therapists really can't diagnose. And going back actually a bit, any diagnosis like that should be given in a multidisciplinary way. So that means more than one discipline, right? But for whatever reason, waiting lists and whatever, often that isn't followed, and that's one of the biggest reasons I will never give a diagnosis on my own. I can tell you if I think someone is or isn't, but I would never do it on my own. The global developmental delay, what often happens, I don't know in your case, but you get the diagnosis and then they'll be goodbye and then they won't see you again.
That's it.
And then you're left with this diagnosis and you're like,
what does it even mean?
Right. And that's really not right.
Yeah.
It's a broken system and it leaves you with this huge thing, label on her. But children adapt and children evolve in the same way that I know someone that had a diagnosis of autism at 2. The child's not got autism, right?
Wow.
But they were given a diagnosis at 2 privately by one doctor.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know, but you shouldn't really be diagnosed to have autism before 3.
Well, they don't now, do they?
No, they don't.
Because they won't.
They wouldn't diagnose
They're not even
Bailey.
seen Bailey yet.
Right.
Privately, they will still.
Right. And it's a real, I get it, but I don't get it. And I think for that reason, having this label for life.
You don't even need the diagnosis to get, it doesn't change anything. Everyone's so, including myself, I'm so I need to get this diagnosis. When is her appointment? It's not going to change anything.
It's not going to change anything.
She is.
It's not going to change anything for you, but for some parents it does,
Yeah.
and it could, because it maybe allows the parent to understand the child more. It can also help on paper.
Yeah, academically,
Not even
schooling.
academically, but like support.
Yeah.
Like as soon as you have a title or a diagnosis, it opens other people's understanding of what's going on, right? That's another benefit, really.
And also, like, just being more, you know, when you're out in public, like with the circumstance you had yesterday when you went to the farm. I know,
great
obviously,
day.
you know that Bailey Bo has autism, but just knowing that you're in public and she's having this meltdown, well, we know as a family that she's autistic, so it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks, but we know it. So it's kind of a reassurance thing as well, and just a more of an accepting thing, having a diagnosis.
I kind of want to put a label on her head saying, I'm autistic, stop staring.
We've been there.
But that's like what I'm saying. It's to help you and to help other people relate. It's easier when you've got a diagnosis, but there are thousands, maybe not millions, thousands or hundreds of thousands of families out there with children who don't fit within the box of autism, but have very similar difficulties. I've met so many families, and I see that's so hard, because like they have all these difficulties, but why?
And I'm seeing lately more and more children getting diagnosed, having learning difficulties or some sort
different
of
behaviours, something without, as you
something.
said, ticking the boxes. And I always say that about Marley, and people say, oh, he's absolutely fine, he speaks, blah, 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 blah. I know my child has something.
Just because he
doesn't tick
speaks
the
doesn't
box.
mean that he doesn't have
Exactly.
something.
And even yesterday, and I'm not afraid to say it because I'm not, we went to our families yesterday and they're saying, what's wrong with his behaviour? Why is he acting this way? And I just want to be like, get with the real world, people. Like, he's not behaving this way because he wants to.
He's not being
or because
naughty.
we've made this happen. He cannot cope with his emotions and how he feels. And even though he can speak, he's 3, he can't communicate. He can't be like, Mum, this top's killing me. It's making me feel really uncomfortable. And that was another question I wanted to ask you, actually, because we also had speech therapy for Callie. And it got to a point where there wasn't really anything else that the therapist could help me with, because she was talking, but the communication side wasn't there. And I used to say to Mum, she's amazing and she's so proud of Callie, the speech therapist, but I'm not going home with any homework now. I don't know what else I can do. And people say, how have you got her to speak? And I can't say, oh, it was me, but it also wasn't the therapist either, because I don't know whether it was just a natural development being at school. But do you go to that next stage with children that now have words and then help with their development? Maybe there are some therapists that only have the speech side and not the I don't know. You tell me.
I think that my framework that I work in is function, right? So like, it's very much, are they functional in their environment? And if they're functional and able to get their needs met, their emotional needs met for their age, then great. Socially is another thing. You can't change the makeup of a child. You can't remove who they are, and you wouldn't want to, right? You wouldn't want to take away their inner self, their self. That's that. Like, I work with so many incredible kids, and some
Bailey being one of
the
those.
best one. The best.
I can't say the best. No. Don't say that. Incredible kids, and I've worked. There's some stick out for this example, so I want to share. And one of them, incredibly intelligent, like blew your mind away with intelligence, and really funny, but you can. There was always something, that you think, that's a bit, what's going on? You don't want to take that away. That's like, so you can say, okay, when you walk in the room, you need to wait and you need to look at me. No, because that's then taking away like who that person is. So it's not really answered your question, but it kind of has, in the sense of, I take clients to as far as I can, but you're not going to change their inner self.
Especially the social side. You're so right. And you can, as a mum, I mean, if Callie's on a play date and I'm there, and they're like, Callie, come upstairs, I want to play with you, and she's just in the corner playing with the toy kitchen, you just want to be like, oh my God, just go play. But you can't change their makeup.
And that's with all kids, not just kids like with extra additional needs. Absolutely. Like, some kids will be more resilient, some kids will be more stubborn.
Yeah.
You don't want to change them. You just want to give them as much skills to be as independent and autonomous and an independent communicator as possible. And that's what I try to get to. So it's not like, where do you stop? Yes.
Would you still continue? Like, would you still
case
ask
by
parents?
case? Yeah, of course. And like there are kids where I'm like, I think they're doing amazingly and they're meeting all their targets in school. Do they still have social communication difficulties? Yes, but are they functioning?
But you're not going to take them away.
Exactly. So are they functioning in year one fine? They're doing amazingly academically. They're doing really good with their friends. Yeah. But they do have some social communication needs, but
I think that's exactly where we are. I think her speech has come on such a long way. But if you've seen her loads of times now, and if you said she's unbelievable, but if you still said to her, Callie, what are you doing this afternoon? Or
she could still ignore me
completely. Or I love your top. She'll be like,
she'll change the subject
hair?
if it's not what
I love your hair. Or I'm making it up, but there's not. She is conversational.
She's very good with her numbers, and her memory and names.
So if Jade asked her a question, she would then be like, when's your birthday? So
and
she's ignored the question completely. She needs to know, what house number are you?
How old is she?
5.5.
I think as well, 5.5, like typical development, huge development happens at like 5, 6, 7 for self-awareness. Probably a bit more advanced with girls than it is with boys. Like about knowing what topic to speak on, or like, you know, I'm not interested in that now. Or, like, this isn't appropriate.
That's just her way of doing it.
Yeah, so you'll probably see that even more with her.
Yeah.
So working on that at 3 is not appropriate, or 4 is not appropriate. Even 5, if she's had additional needs before that, is not appropriate.
Yeah.
But maybe you might revisit it, and that's often what happens with speech therapy. Is like you have a huge need at preschool because that's when language develops and words come and blah blah blah. But then, like you're saying, more social, higher level language is 6, 7, 8, 12. You know, there'll be different things and peaks in her life where you'll see different communication.
So what are like the short-term and long-term effects of having a speech and language therapist?
Again, so case by case. I think short-term is your targets, is like what actual communication targets you're working on. And long-term, I think, is parent education.
Yeah.
And kind of any parent understanding their child and being able to communicate with their child.
And knowing when they don't want to talk or when they do, and because Callie will now very much say, no talking. And we're like, okay, we got you. You
but
don't want to talk.
That's an amazing skill.
Yeah.
Like to be able to say, I don't want to do something and be assertive is as important.
Maybe she knows she needs to regulate.
Yes, but then we need to listen to her.
Yeah.
And I feel like I can, and I feel like Josh, because my husband's so ADHD and he just wants to get it out of her. We tried to do some homework with her this morning. She wasn't in the right frame. She'd just woken up. No, we've got to do it. Callie, what does it look? And I was like, just leave her. So again, there's also like communication between the parents together
100%.
when it comes to, you know, the speech and language of a child.
Having children.
Yeah.
Like before you then have children with additional needs.
Yeah.
I think like
we've got a big bonus, haven't we?
Big bonus?
Yeah. I'm joking.
What did I say?
I think if you're finding it hard as well, by that knowing the communication opportunities, knowing when it's okay not to.
Do you think
and not to be their voice.
Do you think the children are aware of how hard it is for them?
No. Depends. No, I shouldn't say no. Erase. Do I think they are
Depends
aware?
how their communication is.
That goes down to their learning ability.
This is what I find so difficult, is that one rule for one isn't for the other. Just because one does it this way doesn't mean the other one's going to do it that way. That's what I find so challenging. It's like,
I always say,
I can look at Callie and think, do you know what? Bailey's 3. When Bailey gets to Callie's age, she'll be like Callie, but she might not be.
Once you've met one child with autism, you've met one child with autism.
That is what I struggle with.
I think it's a real big struggle for a parent, a SEN parent.
To say the future.
No, just to hear that one autistic child person is
not knowing where your child's going to be. If your child, God forbid, has an illness or something, you kind of know where it's going. Yeah. Or
if they break their arm, there's only 3 places in the arm that you can break it. I made that up.
When I say that, though, I don't mean in the journey. I just mean that it doesn't, just because they're all different. Every child is different.
That's what I find hard.
I know.
I wish that, not that, I've said it before, I wish someone could tell me my future and then I could deal with it, but I just wish that autistic children were more alike to each other. So then I kind of knew where I was. or what I was working towards, because I don't know if Bailey's ever going to speak or communicate. I'd like to hope she is, but by having speech and language, is that helping?
I hope so.
Well, I hope so too, but it doesn't mean that she's going to talk. It doesn't
No.
Doesn't mean
that
because
she's
she's
going
had
to
speech and
communicate.
language means she's going
There's,
to.
I understand there's no fix. I get that. But I'd like to know that something's going to happen by me doing this.
Do you think, this is like now put myself on the line though, do you think that it's helped you understand how to communicate with her in a different way?
1,000,000%.
So that's, I'm so glad
I
you
need
said
to
that,
turn
thank
my
God.
thinking.
But,
No,
but
I'm being honest, Jodi. I wouldn't know how to play with my child if it wasn't for you. You've taught me how to sit there. Sorry, I'm going to get emotional. You've taught me how to sit there and play with my daughter. Whereas I don't know how to do that. I only know how to do that with a typical.
yeah, but you do. And
But that's because of you.
But that's, you say, so without speech therapy, answering your question,
Yeah.
that is speech
I
therapy.
just have to change my thinking.
Yes. And that's what I said, I think, right at the beginning.
Yeah.
Like, it's not about, I'm coming here and I'm making your child talk. And
I wish you
remember,
could.
I know, I wish I could too. And I wish I could do that with all of my clients. If I had one wish, that's what I would do. Because, yeah. But my role isn't to do that, and I think that's really important to put that across. I'm not saying that's not my role, but speech therapy is seen as like, speech therapist comes in and makes your child talk.
It's pressure for you, isn't it, for your job?
But it's not
And I
my
know
job.
that's not your job.
And I'm not saying it like that. My job is more than that. It's to help you
As a family.
communicate as a family with your child. With
I mean, even when
communication
I've been over
difficulties.
to your house, I can see that Jodi's been teaching you. You do your options with her food. You talk. I can see. If I didn't know you and I went to yours, I know that you're having speech therapy.
I think
Bailey's
it's
having
just,
speech therapy.
I'm such a fast-paced person in myself, and it's such a slow pace with Bailey. With all children, maybe with special needs, but I feel like we've been doing the same shit for the last 3 years. And I'm just ready for something different now.
I get it. I really do. But I also remember when I first met.
I think I could do with therapy.
I think maybe that's not a bad
therapist.
idea. And
I've had a shit weekend. Sorry, go on.
No, you well done.
yeah.
Let it out. That's what we're here for.
I think that children like Bailey teach me and you, and that's why I love my job, because I see that so often, and it's a gift. And I know I said that to you when I first came and worked with you. She will teach you more about yourself than anyone. And
Maybe that's why she was given to me.
I don't know. I really do. Anyway.
It's horrible. It's not horrible, but it's so upsetting, because the unknown, especially for a SEND parent, it's almost like, again, and this isn't in a disrespectful way or whatever, like me as well, when you're a therapist, you learn to be able to disconnect, whereas we can never disconnect from our children. And I really, really believed you when you said, if you've got one wish. Like, I really believe that. I can really see how passionate you are and how much you love your children. But I think that's the hardest thing. I mean, I even get therapy because I work with people, and I need my therapist. I need to let it out, because you become so attached to these people, and especially children. They're so amazing. Like, you must adore them, and you just want to shake them or put them in your pocket and take them home and make it happen. So it's really tough. And this woman always reminds. Now, have you seen on TikTok? Are you on TikTok? Am I the loser?
She's not a
I'm the
social
loser on
media
TikTok.
gal.
I need to send you to her. She's a speech therapist, but she does it all through song. Her name's Jen. She's from America.
Okay.
And the way she looks at these children, I just sob every single... Forget that they can speak or they're trying and all amazing. It's how passionate she is about her job. And you can see that with you. And I think that's why you've got such a great reputation, because you want to help.
How are you dealing with the praise?
She's icking out. She hates the praise. But you know what? We all need to hear that praise. And people say it to us that we're great mums, and we're like, oh, God, don't say that, because are we not? But like, people need to hear it, because we are.
Yeah.
And you are.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
I know this is a really not awful question, but a hard question for you to answer.
Go on.
No pressure, Jodi.
No, it's not. It's just because, as you say, it's different for every child. But strategies.
Yeah.
When you work with the child, what do you do for, like, is it role playing? Is it parent led? Is it handover? How do you?
again, it's like I feel like I've answered the same answer. I'm sorry if it's the same one again, but it is.
What are your strategies?
So child-led and so family-led, and that's how I always work. So it's not like I go into a framework. It's not that. My biggest thing is assessing where the child is in the framework and then seeing what strategy will be the best strategy to make the most progress.
And the reason why we are still where we are at is because she's obviously not past that step yet. Because remember, I spoke with you about pet cards, but because there's no communication there, there's no
communication.
Sorry, there's no understanding there. There's no point moving on to the next stage yet.
Yes, not no point. I like to rephrase that. Not no point. It won't be a functional target.
It won't be effective either.
Yeah, it won't be effective.
Do you work with I don't know what they're called, AAC devices? Is that what it's called?
Alternative and augmentative.
Love that.
Communication.
How do you feel about
teach
them?
people,
Love them
children
for the right purpose. Purpose for the right purpose and person. There's no point giving a high-tech iPad to a non-verbal child that has no idea how to use it, and they're just going, no point. But have I seen it work where a child's non-verbal and they've got the cognitive understanding? Unbelievably.
especially in the schools as well. I've noticed it in
Incredibly
schools.
well.
Yeah.
But
Do you use it at a certain age though?
it's not age, it's stage. So
because for me, I don't know if this is correct. Would it stop them from speaking if they have that?
no.
Okay, good. It's not
No.
like, okay, your child doesn't speak now, so
No.
here's a machine.
And that's what I'm going to
no.
rely on.
No, absolutely not.
Fine.
It's a way, going back to, again, like that total communication. It might be that a child finds it easier to give an adult a card to say, I want crisps, versus them actually saying, I want crisps. In the same way, like pressing a button on an iPad. I had a girl, not autistic, that was physically disabled. She had an eye gaze computer. She could talk to me in sentences.
Unbelievable. Through her eyes.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
It's amazing. And
So if they know to hand the card to you because that's what they want, this is also a thing. How can they not? I find it fascinating. They can't say it, but they can show it to you.
yeah, I don't.
There's not that much research and science behind autism, I don't think. Like
the understanding.
Yeah. Like for us lot to understand
The brain connection, you
The
mean?
brain connection.
Yeah.
Yes, I think we're never going to know.
I know.
And
I want to be in her little brain.
I know. I would love to. I understand it, but in order to be able to understand that I need to give a card to you to ask for it, I need to understand that I need to do something to get something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the stage that children need to be to use PECs or to use AAC functionally and appropriately. Because if you don't understand that, you're using cards and words and typing out words with no awareness to get something. And that's the true essence of communication. I need to tell you something. I need to tell you something to get something.
Yeah, and a lot of it comes, I think, with autistic children, repetitiveness. Like doing the same thing over and over. As you've seen, that Bailey can now use a fork. I know. I mean, she won't pick it up by herself and just think, I'm going to use a fork. But if I give her the fork, she knows now not to pick up the food with her finger because I've done it over
That's
and
an
over
understanding
and
then.
over. So I suppose that in itself is a slight understanding.
Repetitive behaviour, so 100%. And I think
Is that how they learn?
it's how anyone learns. It's not just how they learn.
Yeah.
It's how anyone learns. The difference is if you think of like a typical 9-month-old baby, you'll do stuff with them. They'll drop the spoon, you'll pick it up. They'll drop the spoon, you'll pick it up. Eventually they say, oh, every time I drop the spoon, you'll pick it up. The difference being is that they might not have additional needs, so they learn that quicker. Whereas children who do, they need to do it a lot more times to cement and secure that skill.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
So repetition for any child is important. Repetition of knowing your numbers. You'll do it hundreds and hundreds of times. You're just not actively aware that you're doing it hundreds of times.
Or they have that skill where they've seen it once and know the entire alphabet off by heart.
Again,
Which is so fascinating in
that's the
itself
other,
as well.
It's the other
End of the
right.
spectrum, yeah.
Exactly. So repetition for everyone is important.
I saw something again today because I know I'm a loser on social media, but I saw this
least you can admit
guy
it.
that's like, yeah, I'm in fact, I absolutely love TikTok. I think it's fantastic. I saw this because my whole thing is basically to do with like, or anything that I look at, it's all autism stuff because I love to learn. There was a 16-year-old boy that was completely non-verbal, but he got on stage and he can sing songs
I've
fluently.
seen it.
And I, again, sobbing mess this morning because it's just so unbelievable.
So he
But
can't speak,
it's
but he can sing.
No, it's so fascinating. He's got a whole voice. He's a man. He's got a man's voice. And he sings the whole entire song, but can't say one word. It's so fascinating.
It is fascinating.
And we'll never know why.
No, but there's so much out there, and I think I saw someone that can play the piano, and they've got severe learning difficulties, yet they can read music and play like full Beethoven
Just
pieces.
mental.
unbelievable.
It's unbelievable.
It is, and it goes back to everyone's different, and like you can't, and it's almost like that's amazing. But it also does kind of then put these children on like these huge pedestals, you know?
Sure.
And I think that's really
And it's
hard.
again, it's pressure as well for parents to see it. All of this stuff of what we see and what we hear is wonderful and amazing, but it's also pressure too because
It doesn't mean that that's what your child's going to do.
And that's the pressure.
It has changed. I think from when I first graduated or qualified, it was very much like children with autism have special talents. That's what it was then, and that's the kind of, it's really changed since then. Like the media and the knowledge and the awareness. So it has changed from what it used to be.
And everyone just being Rayman, as
But
we always say.
there's still not enough evidence around why or how.
I don't know if we'll ever know.
Yeah,
I really don't. There's billions of research in it at the moment, but loads of research, but.
we just don't know.
We're going to end this, but if you've got anything to say, even if it's like not even a success story, because I know that you can't give so much away about particular people, if there's anything that you can share, because I remember I shared something recently about on my Instagram, so a child didn't speak until, I can't remember what age it was. Do you remember you commented, didn't speak till they're like 8 and now just speaks fluently, and it was just a wonderful, and people kept saying to me, we want more of these, and I know that these things don't happen, but have you got any little nice story that you can share, or a little success story, or anything?
I wouldn't even say a story, but what I will say is focus on total communication, focus on whole holistic communication, and that in itself is so much wider than just waiting for those words. And if you can learn to communicate with a child in any holistic way, I think that's a huge positive.
I really like that, and I really feel like it's changed my perspective as well. Just
I love you.
Thank you so
in the
much
most
for coming
professional
on.
way possible.
I take it professionally.
She loves everyone. Not that she doesn't love you, but she'll say it to everyone. So thank you so much,
Jodi.
Jodi.
Thank you for having me.